Hello everyone, this is a short video to accompany the larger document that's written to give you a very brief overview of it and what to expect from it. I'm going to go over the main points that the document covers, roughly in order. The venue, it's a place that's turned itself around after being somewhat run down a generation ago, and it's still dealing with a hangover of a perception problem dating from that time. You're looking at a place in economic transition that's not fully consolidated yet, and local authorities and leaders for change dealing with the various resistances to necessary change that you get locally, which would be a very common problem for any of you anywhere. The OECD lead presentation by Lucy Pine presented a range of principles and case studies of best practice from 4 areas: career guidance, working with employers, specialized assistance for disadvantaged groups and so on, and non-formal education. You could just use the OECD section to get a very quick overview of the current state of best practice. For each of the 4 themes, it follows the same basic order. You see a description of what the problem is regarding that theme, then what works, which are the principles the OECD is endorsing and advancing to tackle these themes, and then a best case practice that's being chosen to illustrate the principle. So you get one from the US, one from Canada, one from Australia, and one from Belgium. If you want to go into more detail on the various best case studies, you can consult the original presentation documentation and the links to more information from the OECD website and the SALTA publication that I wrote. The Port of Tilbury, an employer's perspective, is pretty much what it says on the tin. I'd advise you to look at that for a quick summary of the main points that he's arguing that training should have, what it should be, and then for a quick overview of where he sees the problems lying. Now, he's describing this in the context of the UK, but most of you, I think, will find these factors are pretty much applicable to your own circumstance, and you see them succinctly summarized. Another key point of that particular presentation that you might want to bring out is to compare the relative success of his program with that of a current government program in the UK, which has a success rate of 3.6%. Food for thought. Tilbury stresses the importance to always be running these programs in a partnership approach, which syncs very nicely with the rationale for JobTown. Then we get the mentoring program from Kaiserslautern, that's section number 3, I believe. The fundamental thing to bring out, I think, with that practice is the role of civil society. The local authority is a partner in the program, but only a partner. A lot of the participants are volunteers. Some of them are sort of church affiliated, but others are not. And together this public and civil society partnership works for this particular practice. The next practice, number 4, I believe, is the Youth Employment Center, all under one roof, they said. The gist of this particular presentation, it's all about taking a number of different services, making them more joined up and coordinated, and actually putting them together physically as well, so that you have these different actors on maybe one given young person are coordinated in a coherent approach, and also that the young person goes to a single place as opposed to different places. And it works. It's a good way to do things. You might remember in Avilés, in their own way, they were tackling somewhat similar issues, how to make services more joined up and integrated, coordinated in their approach to young people and in their accessibility. A good thing to bring out about this case is, despite the name employment agency, it's not strictly about employment per se, rather it's about a holistic approach to the problems of these young people. These are targeting young people who have either long-term unemployed or who are the working poor, that they're in employment but their prospects are so poor that unless something is done, they're destined to poverty. These are youths with what they call multiple placement obstacles, so drugs, debts, you name it. You're talking about problems we all see anywhere. They get a long-term accompaniment, which tries to bring all these strands of different problems and needs into one cohesive approach. Then we get section 5 on the German dual VET system. I suppose this was the obvious centerpiece of the workshop in Germany, which makes sense because this, of course, is a strong best practice that you can access in Germany. Obviously, the key thing to understand about the dual system, it's about learning taking places in two places, hence the name dual. You have a school, and then you have a real workplace with real work being done, which is the vehicle for learning, and it's all joined up. A good point to take away is that it's not just about developing very specialized skills for work like electronics or whatever. There are also more general work skills, more generic life skills, sociability, and so on. And this is tackled in an overall approach. Another thing I think that's important, and that I think that you all probably saw, is how the approach to learning and apprenticeships is really deeply embedded in the local environment, the local communities, the local businesses. It's a very locally embedded approach. Another key point to bring out about the German system is that the frontline people delivering the learning, either in the businesses or the schools, have a lot of flexibility in deciding their methodology and approach and so on. They're not being micromanaged from Berlin. Another good point to take away from the German practice that we saw was that it provides multiple pathways. So a young person can enter this system and they have choices to make about to what degree they want to become a qualified worker of some sort. They can stop at different points or continue and add on different options, and it can go in different directions. They can also be using this process as a bridge towards university or polytechnic education. I think this is quite important because what it means is that a young person who begins this process and goes into it, once they begin, it's not like they're trapped into this kind of train track that only goes one way. It allows for different sort of swap and match options, different paths can be chosen, and there's an ability to decide for oneself. And it's not condemning these people necessarily to a specific level of education or work. They're allowed to make those decisions and have those options for later. The transfer of the dual system. Now this is a special issue because I'm in contact with the German Institute for Vocational Education and Training. It's called the BIBB in its German acronym. Now they're very interested in working with JobTown. They've expressed a desire to go forward, explore, to see what we can do. So I've spoken to them and they're putting together a sort of information package on a set of questions I gave them just to help you out. And then once they put that all together, I'll give you a briefing on that as a separate matter altogether, just on that. And then each of you will go from there depending on what you think is best for you with this option. Going to the elements that I talk about in this document, we look at the matter of transfer. Now, I think everyone has seen why in countries like Germany, the Netherlands, etc., this practice has served them well, the various advantages it confers upon them, and why it's very good for them. The question is, could we, who are not German, Dutch, etc., could we have such a system? Well, the answer is kind of mixed. It can be yes or no, depending how you frame that question. Now, if you look at the system as we saw it in Germany, it's pretty obvious that there are a number of specificities that you find there that make it what it is today, having to do with German history, local culture, options, things that have been going on there, institutional frameworks, regulatory frameworks, and along, etc. Okay? So, if you frame the question, can we just transplant the way things work in Germany elsewhere in quite different environments? You'd have to say probably not, if you were to be fully honest. Now, the constructive, sort of more optimistic way of looking at it is that it's not so much about cloning the German situation elsewhere. Rather, it's identifying what are the fundamental principles. Now, what they've identified in Germany is 5 core principles. These are learning through real work in a real place of work, cooperation of government, educators, industry, and social partners, national standards, qualified VET instructors, a stable, research-based advisory system that feeds into it. How it works basically is a kind of diagnostic procedure. You've got these 5 core principles. You get a hold of them, not so much looking at how they do things in Germany, but you begin by looking at how you do things in your place. Look at your situation and how are you in each of these 5 principles You do this diagnosis, then on the basis of your identified gaps and needs, you develop a plan for improving them, building up these 5 core principles. In a nutshell, that's how you go about the transfer process. So to wrap up, 1, I look forward to hearing more from you later on about this knowledge transfer workshop process. It's kind of a laborious name. And how it went, what you did, why you thought something worked or didn't so much. I'll brief you on the situation with this German Institute for VET and the kind of support they might be able to offer as soon as I get the information from them that I've requested. And then each of you will go from there, obviously, for whatever makes the most sense for you. I would really stress at this point that you really want to be starting to put together the beginnings of your local action plan. The local action plan is a process, not a document that you produce just at the end. The idea is that it kind of grows with you as you develop through the life cycle of the project. So you really want to start putting the flesh or some flesh on it at this point. Yeah? Also, that will allow us to exchange and talk amongst each other as we begin to have something that we're saying we're trying to do with our local action plan, something we can put our fingers on. I look forward to seeing all of you in Rennes in February, and everyone be well.